Hello, and welcome to the EduCurious Podcast. I'm Dr. Amber Love Johnson, and this is where we highlight exceptional educators and dive deep into complex issues. Today's guest is Dr. Belinda Reyes, and she is the CEO of Reyes Executive Coaching and Leadership Solutions. She's held many different titles. I can't wait to dive in and get to know her a little bit more. So welcome to the show, Dr. Reyes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So let's jump right in. What caught my eye with you when I was looking at all your credentials was you really worked from the ground up all the way and held so many different seats. One of them is former assistant superintendent, which is a huge responsibility. So just tell me just a little bit about your journey, and then we'll dive into some deep questions.
So my journey really began in Puerto Rico. I came here as a child to Florida in fifth grade and really went up through the public system. I believe that was really life-changing for me. I have been privileged to hold positions starting as a media clerk in an elementary school, and I have had so many opportunities teaching English, being an assistant principal, district leader, executive director, assistant superintendent, and parent champion were really the way that I closed out 30 years with a golden brooch. So I've been very privileged to serve in many capacities.
You are the first person in your family to graduate from college. That's a big unknown going out there without a pathway or landmark to lean on. So tell me a little bit about that perspective.
Our first home was a configured car garage while we waited for housing. My parents really took a leap of faith, and they did it for education. They did it to make sure that we had an opportunity. What that was, it wasn't really clear, but what was clear was they wanted us to be somewhere where we had a fighting chance to make something of ourselves. And I remember still, we really left everything behind. We were driving out away from the house, and I look back and I remember still seeing clothes on the clothesline. We just really came with very little, but very much because we came with faith and hope and hard work and grit that our parents instilled in us. When I walked into the University of Central Florida to earn my bachelor's degree in English language education, really I was walking in with my family, with my community, and with everything that they had hoped for all.
When did you first realize that getting an education was the key to unlocking future potential?
Really, it was when we came here. And I have to speak of my fifth grade teacher, Miss Visconti, when she welcomed me and she gave me a voice when I didn't have language to express, whether it was through gestures or however it was. She made sure that she knew what I had to contribute was important. And the moment that I realized that I mattered and what was in my mind mattered enough for me to learn how to get it out of my mouth. When I realized that there were people rallying around and their mission was to ensure that every child would grow up to contribute to a community, I realized that public education was there to support my dreams.
And how do you use that same mindset in your leadership role when you're trying to give voice to maybe someone that works with you or for you or you're mentoring?
Something I've learned through that I've taken is that for people to really feel like they belong, they really need to be seen, to know that they're there and that they matter, and even more than heard, to be understood. And sometimes that takes some words, and sometimes that just takes seeing someone and being there to provide the scaffolds and the supports that they need to be able to articulate their needs and articulate what they bring to the table, because no one comes from zero. So that really taught me everyone has something to contribute. And it's just a matter of how do I provide them the support and the tools to unlock their ability to express that. And really, that has nothing to do with language. it has to do with that human connection.
Do you have an example of how you respond to a situation where there's not clarity within the communication and you're able to jump in and like extract that from someone? How does a good leader do that?
Sometimes parents, especially parents of multilingual students, there is a trust and a reverence for education. And sometimes they themselves mute that voice because they feel that educators would know. They defer to us with that trust. And so really saying, yes, we went to school, we're educated, we're here for your children, and we absolutely have expertise to contribute, but you know your child and every story and every wound, and what you have to share with us matters. And so that's something that I have been grateful to be able to do, both as a classroom teacher, as I build relationships with parents, but also as a principal, a building leader, and as a district leader. As a district leader, that really came to fruition when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. And we had in 1 month upwards of 2,700 students enroll within a month in our school district. Those families were displaced and they lost much, and it was an emotional toll. So we really wrapped around them. We did regional meetings. We had the whole family, not just those that moved here, but whomever they moved with, and really gave them some acculturation. What are your rights here? What are your responsibilities? Here are some resources. Tell us, what are your needs as a family? And then we link them to community supports, because of course, schools, we're limited as to the whole child of everything that we can offer, but we are not limited in being community connectors. I would say by not only listening to them and providing what they needed, but also building a relationship of trust so that they feel seen and that they are heard, and they know that they're not just heard but also understood. When we reported back, you shared this with us and this is where we are with it. These are the changes that we've made because you gave us feedback. So I would say that's one example of really ensuring that people understood, not just felt, but understood that their well-being as a whole family was a priority.
So here in the United States, what have you noticed that continues to be a common misconception with multilingual students, particularly ELL in the Florida area?
I would say that language is a barrier. And it is true that it takes effort and work both on the part of the student, the teacher, and the family as they're learning English. But again, these children do not come from zero. They have a language that we can tap into so that they can be heard and understood within our school system. So knowing that it's important to provide the support and the scaffolds for them to be able to link the knowledge they already have. Our multilingual students are doing superpower work. And I know that's a term out there by many saying bilingualism is a superpower. And the reason that they say that is because our students, our multilingual students, are not just expected to learn English. They're expected to learn English and keep up with grade level content work and continue to learn even as they're learning a second language. And that takes a lot of skills. So when you look at that, multilingual students have an incredible grit, incredible amount of hope and faith in our system and in us as educators, but they're putting in the work, and they're putting in the work double time. That needs to be celebrated as a strength and not a barrier.
So while you're honoring the needs of multilingual students or students that need additional accommodations, how do you balance that, in your opinion, with rigorous instruction for all students? It's sort of like an impossible task, but we all face as educators.
So thank you for the question, because it makes me smile. Notice I call our students multilingual students. In the past, I've also called them emergent bilinguals. Why? Because they don't lack a language. They're actually learning a second language, right? However, in a lot of circles, you'll also hear the term English language learner. To your point and question about how do we take care of the multilingual students while making sure that they are all growing? Well, I'm going to pose this to you. When do we stop teaching English in a pre-K 12 setting? What year? Every single year through 12th grade. If students go on to college, they have freshman comp 1, freshman comp 2, English continues, right? My stance on this is every student right now, regardless of state, is an English language learner all through school. So if we're taking care of English language learning, I'm going to argue that there's no separation, that we are really maximizing that for all students. And I will share with you that many of the strategies for multilingual students will work for students who have interrupted learning. Students, for whatever reason, might be English monolingual students, and still they are behind in language or content. So to me, I'm taking care of all the students when I use the strategies. It's really about all means all, to your point, right? All means all. We take care of all students, and all means all only when we meet the needs of each.
You've done a lot of work with turnaround schools. So I'd like to know a little bit more about what turnaround means to you from a systems level.
For some people, turnaround means a quick turnaround, dramatic, quick fixes. For me, turnaround means restoring hope. It means that students and teachers feel seen, teachers feel supported, families feel connected. It's about deep, substantive change rooting instruction, culture, and relationships that we build. It is something that has to be lasting. So throughout my career and as assistant superintendent, I've seen growth in student achievement outcomes. When I stepped away, that momentum continued. And I was so excited as scores were coming in to see great things happening and continued and dramatic growth based on their continued work, based on their leadership. And that's what we strive for. No one that's a turnaround leader has collapsed when they step away. A turnaround leader builds a system that others take, and it morphs and it changes and it grows. And that's the design. The design is to continue to the work, not only to carry as is, but to be better and better every year. And so that's what we should strive for. And when we see that, I tell you, I spent almost a whole day as the scores were coming out and principals were sharing, out, just congratulating them for reaching higher levels for their leadership, and celebrating their shine, because that's what we should all strive to do. A piece of us remains everywhere that we go. And so when that continues to blossom, we celebrate. We need to see more of that rather than celebrations surrounding a particular leader, because it's really about that collective community continuing to learn and grow. When I served as a principal, I also served as a turnaround mentor for the state of Florida for other turnaround leaders. And so something that I stressed was linking elbows with the staff, with the community, with the parents and the students. And really, that work informed a lot of my contribution to the book I co-authored with Drs. Collado and Marrero when we published our piece on engaging families and really empowering families as partners, using field examples throughout the book, reflective questions, and really giving them a guide so that they could put together a parent engagement empowerment plan. And really, we titled the book Empowering Families Thriving Students because informing is important, one-way communication. Engaging is great to get parents in and involved in activities in the schools, but empowering is where the secret sauce lies. That's where we harvest the knowledge and the support from the families to not just do what we say or we recommend, but to inform the structures of the school. And that really is part of turnaround because you're not just turning around a student or a school, you're turning around an entire community.
Tell me a little bit about the process of authoring a book, co-authoring a book. That is no small feat. How do you even start that? What did that entail? How long did it take?
We worked on that from start to finish. I would say it probably took 2 years. And the reason is we are all working our full-time jobs that are 15-hour-a-day jobs. So what we would do is we would set a date. For us, it was Wednesday late at night when we knew that we could give this time to task. It took a bit because it's 3 authors. When it's one author, it's your input and you're putting everything together. But when it's 3 authors, you are making decisions about the structure of the book and what's really the meaning. The first thing really was this finding like souls that have not the same exact experience, but the same hope for students, the same expectations for our community, and the same regard for themselves as leaders when it comes to carrying this out in real time. It means being with a group of people that are willing to not just talk the talk, but are willing to guide future generations in part based by their experience, in part based by research. So the first thing was finding the right people. After that, we would meet every Wednesday and we really talked about the end. Who's our audience? And when they read this book, what do we hope they glean from the book? And what do we want to challenge them to do? How are we going to impact multiple communities, multiple states with this work in a way that's meaningful to them? So being practitioners, we value research and we value what that looks like in real time. So we went through all the research strategies. We decided which ones really connected with each other and would maximize effects for multiple audiences. And then we thought about when we led this work, when we knew of other people that led this work, how did they go from A to C? So really, the first chapter is all about the plan overall. What's the vision? Why have a plan? How to execute the plan? And the remaining chapters are really the 14 strategies of how to implement the plan and how to involve the community all throughout the plan so that they're a part of that work.
So when you finish the book, it's published and you have it in your hand. Is your goal or was your goal to give it to the principal, to that superintendent, to the district leader, to all the staff for a book study? Who is your audience for this amazing piece of work?
So the audience are district and school leaders, but it reads really as a storytelling throughout. We have some stories in there. So even parent organizations that want to say, we'd like to partner with the school. Here's a framework. How can we work together? So really, it's really research-based, which educators really value, but also it is based on grounded work that, yes, we say in a cloud research works, but how does this look in an urban school? How does this look in a suburban school? How does this work in the southern United States? How does this work in the West Coast? So there are stories and examples from various different school districts, various parts of the country, so that it doesn't feel or is not at all really just to a certain region. It's something that any educator can pick up and make this work for their system. And listen, teachers can do this in isolation within a classroom community, but the bigger picture, the bigger value really is for whole systems to really engage and empower parents.
So you talk a lot about the collaboration and the engagement. And with your tenure, you have all the experience and you keep mentioning research, which I think is critical when you're putting out information. It's research based. So I'd like to hear a little bit about your journey writing your dissertation, which is probably part of this story in this book. But tell me about that process of getting your doctorate and how it has helped elevate you to become your best, maximizing your potential.
My research was really about dual language educations to close achievement gaps. Dual language is not just a class for Spanish speaking or another language. In our region, Spanish happens to be the predominant second language, but it's not just about multilingual students learning English. It is about really all students, because a dual language class is composed approximately 50% of that class are multilingual students whose first language is Spanish in this case. And 50% of that class is monolingual English-speaking students that have never spoken Spanish. And the way that works in elementary school is they're together in one class and they are taught half of the subjects all in English with scaffolds and supports, but all in English. The second half of the day is taught all in Spanish. The subjects are not taught one language in 1 hour and one language in another. They have English, they have social studies, they have certain subjects that are all in English. They have math, they have science, they have other subjects that are taught all in Spanish with scaffolds and supports for both English speaking students and the Spanish speaking students. So at the end of a dual language program, both sets of students are bilingual, bicultural, and biliterate. So it really gives everyone value as far as the language that they're supporting their peers in and what they are learning. So did that make a difference? The answer is yes. When we support a student's language, their achievement will rise, whether they're monolingual students or they multilingual students. And I will tell you this, in implementation, districts shouldn't expect, as we always do, an overnight turnaround, right? It does take a little bit of time for us to learn this second language. And in fact, research shows that it takes really 5 to 7 years to gain academic language. But the students in dual language programs, in the long run, learn deeper and faster, and research after research, data after data show that consistently year to year, dual language students, whether they happen to have been the monolingual or the multilingual, outperform their peers in every subject, even when tested with English language tests by the state. So that really shows the power leveraging language rather than seeing it as a barrier. How does that inform my leadership role? Well, that affirms that there are unlimited possibilities. Not to see people's differences as barriers or something to keep them down from being able to contribute. It has taught me to focus on supporting and envisioning acceleration over remediation.
How do you carry that vision of empowerment, which you so nicely summarized, into your work you're doing now? You have an executive coaching and leadership solutions company and you're the CEO. What does that work look like and how are you helping empower the leaders of today?
So previously, I was in the weeds, linking elbows, directly engaging in the work on the day-to-day work to make things happen. In my current role, I'm able to take all those experiences and support districts, whether that be teachers, school-based administrators, the district support around what will be the most successful for your students that you are serving. So my work is very tailored. I travel all over the United States, providing strategies, support, coaching on how to implement systems and strategies to maximize the learning and the belonging of students and their families. And I'm able to do that drawing upon the experiences that I've gained boots on ground, right? But what's exciting about my work is that I am a learner. So whenever I go to a different state, different districts, I learn something new, and it's really powerful because I am very blessed that many districts invite me back. So when I come back, I don't come back the same person that left them. I come back with even more knowledge and strategies that I've gained because of the people that I've worked with. I think it goes back to that valuing the fact that we are not pouring into other people. We're swimming together. We're learning every time that we have an interaction. So that has certainly been an exciting journey.
Over your course of education and leadership and coaching, what's one of the lessons that has stayed with you?
One of the lessons that has stayed with me the longest is the power of people. It is the humanity. It is the fact that we do not teach subjects. We do not teach courses. We teach people. So if we want, and of course we want, instruction to improve, we need to understand as leaders that we're not really improving instruction. We are contributing to the growth and opportunities of people. Why? Because, and this is a hard lesson to learn, especially for a leader like myself that really likes to dig into the work. Unless we as leaders are teaching the class every single day, we cannot improve instruction. We can improve the support and the learning of the teachers, and they improve the instruction that they provide children. Because in the end, whatever we do for a teacher, we're doing for children. And it's interesting when we listen to debates, especially around this time of year when districts are doing contract negotiation. We need to have this for the children, and we'll see what we can do for the teachers. Yes, I know all about balancing a budget, and it really shows people's priority on what they choose to fund. But the bottom line is that a teacher's work environment is a student's learning environment. So it's really important to me to carry my lesson that the biggest thing that we could do for kids as leaders is to support, to grow, and to accelerate what we do for those that serve them, whether that be the teachers, the paraprofessionals that support. Every single person that works within a school building is critical to student achievement. And every single person whose desk does not belong permanently at a school should be focused on providing support and taking away barriers for those who do.
Could you elaborate a little bit about what supporting that teacher looks like to you? Because I've heard so many different answers, and maybe some of the top answers that come to mind that have proved successful. How do you support that teacher through leadership?
First, get to know the teacher. Sometimes as leaders, because of observations and score, we see a two-dimensional model of the professional learning that we should be providing teachers to help them grow and be successful. But we really need a 3D model. We need to know, what does that teacher feel they need to grow? What do they need to fill their cup? Because there's so much more than what we're observing that meet the moment that instruction happened. All that professional learning community planning everything that's going on with a teacher. To really support a teacher, we really need to build that relationship with this teacher, because this teacher is above all a human, a colleague, a mother, a friend, a daughter, a family member. So we need to value that as the very whole humans that they are. In the same way that we consider the conditions for learning for students, it is so important to value and consider the conditions for teaching that our teachers have. And so I think the first thing is really build that relationship to really know how we can best help, to understand that there's not one person on campus that could do it all, that we need to build collective efficacy in order to not only grow that building and those students, but to have the teachers synergize together. What does that do? That really shares everyone's expertise for the benefit of every student. But you know what else that does? It makes this job a little less lonely, because when we close that classroom door, it's the teacher and the kids. But if they can feel like they can harness the power of all their colleagues, that is supporting a teacher. So I would say relationships. I would say absolutely not only hearing teachers through surveys and little conversations, but really seeking to understand where they are, where they wish to go, and how we can support them to be the professional that they're seeking to be and the professional that our students need.
What does a productive conversation look like about data with the teacher and the administrator to still work towards what you just described as supporting the educator? How do you look at the data and really get to the bottom of what they need that they might not know they need?
And we have had a shift in education that we are ultra focused on data. We can have academic data, cultural data. We can have all kinds of holistic data that is very powerful to us. I think the very first thing that we all as educators need to come to understand and really verbalize out loud is that behind every data point is a human being. So what this data is telling us is part of the picture of what is it that these humans are coming into. So what does that mean? When we look at a class and we see 90% of the students are achieving at level, we celebrate that, right? That's amazing. 90% is amazing. And we seek nothing less than 100%. Why? Because I don't know about you. I don't want to be the person that tells a parent, I'm okay with your child not achieving because 90% of the class really did a great job. So it's looking at, yes, there's a 90-10. So let's look at the 90. What supports do these students have in school and out that led to this 90%? And the 10%, what are some factors? Are they learning factors? Are they academic factors? Or could they be a conditions of learning factor that might be keeping them from achieving? So for example, we've talked about achievement gaps. And our nation looks at different subgroups to make sure that we're taking care of the needs of all the subgroups. But when a teacher is faced with data that shows my Black subgroup has an achievement gap between the Black subgroup and the white subgroup, or my Hispanic subgroup, or my English language learner, as it's termed nationally, subgroup, what do you do for that? When you look at data, what do you do for a group that all you're getting is, this is a group of Black students, or this is a group of Hispanic? What do you do for that instructionally? How do you do something instructionally different for a Black student versus a white student, for a Hispanic student versus a white student? So it's about looking deeper and understanding the whole picture, because usually those gaps exist. It has nothing to do with nationality or race. It has to do for this proportionate amount of supports that different subgroups experience with the conditions of learning. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at attendance data. Let's look at behavior data. Let's look at socioeconomic, like free and reduced lunch data. How does that impact instruction? It's nothing new that students of color typically see that they have higher disciplinary action. They have higher instances of suspension. So when we look at, there's a lot of absenteeism, but then I look a little deeper at that data and see there's high levels of absenteeism, and that's because we've been suspending them a lot of days. And so we're contributing to the absenteeism. Now, listen, we have to have a level of respect and control at a school because it has to be a condition for learning that a school is safe. So we have to hold students accountable. It's not that. It's about how can we code switch and teach students that in an educational professional setting, this is how we behave. These are the choices that we make. How can we train our staff to recognize ways to teach students behavior rather than give consequences that they learn nothing from? And then we go back to a suspension cycle, to sometimes systems that we create that we don't realize are contributing to these parts of learning that are impacted by students. For example, at one point, I was executive area director for a minority achievement office that was created in Orange County Public Schools under the amazing leadership of Dr. James Lawson. He is a mentor and just a blessed man. So something that we did was really dig deep and help schools dig deep into their discipline data, especially those schools that we saw high discipline and low academic achievement. What did we find? We pulled their guidance counselors at the time. Now they're called school counselors, and their assistant principals, their dean, and they would meet with us on a monthly basis to look at data and try to discern what's going on. So we were looking at a lot of suspension of minority students. When we dug down deep, the school happened to be under construction. We're looking at, there's a lot going on. So the principal attended this meeting along the assistant principal. And I want it noted that only the assistant principal was required. The principal came because they wanted to know what's this initiative and how we can help the school. So we dug down and saw what were the referrals for insubordination. And before they were an out-of-school suspension referral, where did that stem from? It stemmed from repeated misconduct. What was the misconduct? So we dug down, and here was the misconduct. They did not attend Saturday school. They got Saturday school because they did not attend after multiple opportunities to attend Wednesday detention. And why did they get Wednesday detention? They got Wednesday detention because they were repeatedly late to class. So we valued education and time in class so much that we gave consequences for students who were not to class on time. But we cost them days and days of suspension where not only were they late a few minutes to class, but they were really missing a lot of instruction. So we dug even deeper than that. Why are they being late to class? It's a certain periods. And it was. And you know what it was? Some of the students, I would say about 90% of the students that were caught in this suspension cycle was because their classes were from one end to the campus to the other. And with the construction, they had to reroute students and it added to their walking. So they were never going to be able to get to class. It's not that they weren't insubordinate. These were students who were bus riders and could not stay for Wednesday detention because they did not have a ride. They would not be able to get home. But when we just look at data at face value, we don't see the why or what's happening with the people behind that data. Any data, whether it's academic or, data that is around conditions for learning, such as attendance or discipline, we really have to work on those 5 whys and determine what's going on, because data is never just a number. Data is representative of something that's running in the background.
What is something that you are most proud of in your whole career in education. Tell me a little bit about that and anything that comes to mind that maybe I didn't get the chance to ask you in this interview, and then we'll close out at the end.
What I am most proud of in education has so little to do with any accomplishment that I have personally achieved. I have been blessed in the achievements that I have been able to make, considering the modest background from my family, because we were rich in love, rich in faith, rich in hope, rich in support and love for one another, and that dream. That we can make it, that vision in our parents, that even though they didn't realize how that was going to happen, it was so important to them that they upheaved their life to come to where they believed we would be able to get that support to make that happen. So when I think of the achievement, for me, it's about everything that others have been able to achieve, in part because of a little pebbles I was able to add to their bucket. Every one of those means something to me. I feel like I have made a difference in this world when I see that. That is students that till this day communicate with me and see how I'm doing and share with me because it's important to them that I know how they're doing. It's about parents that do the same. It's about teachers and staff, just friendships forever. Because we were grounded in the faith and hope and belief in each other, and that they were able to do because they had the skill, because I had just a little part in their life to really help them shine. I tell you why that's important to me. There's someone that I have to name by name when it comes to this, and I want to name and speak into the universe Miss Denise L.R. Para. And Miss Para was my 11th grade English teacher. And she had such a profound impact on me. Not only did she inspire me by her passion for teaching, her incredible knack to make literature come alive, and really just what cemented that I wanted to be an English teacher. But let me tell you what Miss Para did for me. At the time, I'm a senior. I'm the first one going to college. I'm just looking around what other people are doing because I have no sense really of what it takes to get into a college or pay for a college. And so thankfully I had very good friends who were more as to what needed to happen. And so I was following that along, and a scholarship came open that I would be eligible, and it was the Coca-Cola scholarship. And so this was my first that I was filling out, and I needed a letter of recommendation. And I went to Miss Para and I asked for this letter of recommendation. Miss Para wrote the most beautiful letter, just highlighting the attributes that she felt were my strengths and, everything that she felt I could accomplish. And she gave me this letter, and I took it and I ran. It was between classes. I looked at this letter, and I did not get that scholarship because I never submitted it. I could not give up this letter. I had never had anyone make me feel so capable, make me see the strengths that I had and recognize them in myself. And she really did that all along in her teaching. But when that was immortalized on paper, I felt like not only can I do this, I have to do this. If someone has taken the time to do this for me, to think of me this way, I surely can rise to the occasion. And so I've strived my life to do that for others, whether they were students or whether they're educators. So I would say that my experiences started from a strong public school education where educators saw me and not only heard me, but understood me from the moment that I started learning English to the moment that I started teaching English. And I was so blessed because my first teaching job was teaching across the hall from Miss Para. I went back to my hometown high school. I taught in the classroom of my senior year teacher, Mrs. Axe, who I loved as well. But that circle around experience, I take with me everywhere. I take with me that every word, every encouragement, every expectation, and every call out of you can do better. And I believe in you, and I'm going to link elbows with you. And I expect you to rise to the occasion. That grit, that belief, that support, that has made who I am.
Thank you for sharing all your experience with us today. You are a lifelong learner and you refuse to just take that. You are giving back in every moment, every opportunity. And that's really special. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and it has been just a wonderful time getting to know you as well.
So whether you're a teacher, a parent, or just EduCurious, join the community as we explore various educational topics and learn from each other. And remember, be EduCurious. Bye.